Good afternoon, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for August 19, 2014, around 2:22 in the afternoon. It's around 72 degrees in Belleville, Massachusetts, low humidity, and this is getting to be the end of the summer days. Very nice to see summer going out with perfect weather like this. I'm in between jobs right now, and I've been putting my name in the hat for medical records clerk. I just put in a resume for that. Tomorrow I'm going to a job fair. Hopefully I could find something. If not, I have to probably wait it out to see if RDT Demoulas is going to buy Market Basket from his estranged cousin Arthur S. Demoulas and the board of directors. This has been going on for several weeks now, and hopefully they could get a deal done Friday, but it's going to be very difficult because there's been so much bad blood between this. I don't want to get into it. It's just hopefully something works out in the favor that RDT Demoulas gets Market Basket back. But we'll wait and see. But I can't wait for this decision to happen, so I have to do what I have to do in trying to find some job right now, and I hopefully get it. If not, then I'll have to wait for this decision to come down, and if it happens, I'll return to Market Basket, which hopefully I can return to Market Basket when this is all said and done. We'll wait and see about that. Some news to report. The owner of the New York Islanders, Charles Wayne, has agreed to sell the team to a group headed by John Ladetsky and Scott Malkin. Scott Malkin used to own Washington Capitals at one time, so that's going to work out for him. And that's about it for the news. My second video blog of the day is about a former professional wrestler slash professional wrestling manager, Mr. One Paul Jones. Paul Jones was a famous wrestler who mainly wrestled in the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling in Florida during his career. He won many titles, and he was a manager for a lot of years in the late 80s and stuff like that. Paul Jones was born in Texas, and he was born with his real name is Paul Fredrickson. Paul started his career in wrestling. He was trained by legendary Houston promoter Paul Boesch, and he made his debut in the world of wrestling in 1964 under the name of Young Paul Jones, because there was another Paul Jones who was a legendary wrestler who wrestled in Georgia for many years, back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s. They didn't want to get them confused with that. And then Paul wrestled under the name of Al Fredrickson for a while. Then he went to rest because he wrestled in Texas and he wrestled overseas. Then by the late 60s, he wrestled mainly on the East Coast for Jim Crockett's Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling promotion for years as Mr. One Paul Jones, and Paul won many titles for Jim Crockett Promotions. Several times he won the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship. He won the U.S. Championship several times. He's won the Mid-Atlantic Television title so many times. And he was Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling Tag Team Championship on about 7 occasions with many partners, including Chief Wahoo McDaniels, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Baron von Raschke, and the Masked Superstar. He was 1978 Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Tag Team of the Year with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and they won a couple of times the Mid-Atlantic World Tag Team Championships. And later on in the year, Paul Jones turned on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and they had a famous feud as well. Also, from time to time, Paul Jones went down to Florida, and he won the Florida Heavyweight Championship so many times as well. And around 1980, Paul wrestled under a mask called Mr. Florida, and he was involved in an angle with the Super Destroyer, another masked wrestler managed by Sir Oliver Humperdinck. And this angle involved Sir Oliver Humperdinck smoking a cigar. He thought the Super Destroyer won, but Mr. Florida reversed the hold and pinned him 1, 2, 3, and Sir Oliver Humperdinck was going wild, and just as about like he was going to attack Sir Oliver Humperdinck. The Super Destroyer gets the cigar and burns Mr. Florida's eye, and that was a great angle. By the early 1980s, Paul Jones stopped wrestling, and he became a wrestling manager, and he managed a lot of heels, and he was nicknamed also the Weasel. Some of the wrestlers he managed were the Assassins, the Superstar Billy Graham, Abdullah the Butcher, the Barbarian, Shaska Watney, Tico Khan, Baron von Raschke, Rick Rude, Manny Fernandez, Ivan Koloff, the Powers of Pain, the Russian Assassins, Tully Blanchard, and a couple of others. During this time, Paul Jones was famous for having a feud with the Boogeyman Jimmy Valiant, and this feud lasted 2.5 years in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling that turned into Jim Crockett's Promotions in the major NWA territory in the 80s. And it all started when the Assassins were holding Jimmy Valiant, and Paul Jones cut part of Jimmy Valiant's very long beard, and then they started a feud with like Jimmy Valiant wrestling Assassin number 2, and he unmasked them, and Paul Jones was handcuffed to the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and that started the angle. Plus, in addition, like the Assassin got unmasked, and it turned out to be the late Hercules Hernandez. Later on, Jimmy Valiant wrestled Paul Jones in several types of matches, bunkhouse matches, chain matches. Jimmy Valiant had to face a lot of people in Paul Jones's army, which was great. It was a long-running feud. I think one time Paul Jones had his head shaved by the Boogie Woogie Man, and the feud continued on for several more months. Like Jimmy Valiant's best friend, Pistol Pez Whatley, joined Paul Jones' army after Jimmy Valiant said in the interview about Pez Whatley that Pez was the best black athlete in the world today, and Pez is African American, and he attacked Jimmy Valiant, and he cut off this ponytail with his hair, and they showed it all around. And during this time, Paul Jones grew a mustache, and he wore like an army general outfit, and people were booing him like crazy. And like that, around October 1986, Jimmy Valiant's best friend, Manny Fernandez, the Raging Bill, turned on Jimmy after Paul Jones offered him a lot of money, cash money, to turn on him, and they were teasing it like Manny shut the briefcase, was going to throw the money away, but he knocked out Jimmy Valiant, and then he joined Paul Jones' army, and later on, him and Ravishing Rick Rude won the NWA World Championships over the Rock and Roll Express, and they held the belt for about 6-7 months. And later on, in Paul Jones's career, he managed the Powers of Pain and Ivan Koloff to the NWA World Six-Man Tag Team Championship, but that they lost it back to the Road Warriors and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. The Powers of Pain eventually left for the WWE, and then Paul Jones brought the Masked Russian Assassin to team with Ivan Koloff, but eventually, Ivan Koloff did a babyface turn, and they had another Russian Assassin, and at Starrcade 88 it was supposed to be Ivan and Nikita Koloff against the Russian Assassins for their mask, but Nikita left the NWA, and during the Clash of Champions before that, Ivan Koloff wrestled Paul Jones in a one-arm match, which Ivan Koloff won easily, and then it was Ivan Koloff and the Junkyard Dog beating the facing off against the Russian assassins for the mask at Starrcade 88. The Russian assassins who were masked were the Angel of Death, Dave Shelton and Jack Victory, but they weren't unmasked because of the Russian assassins won, and they kept the mask. But eventually this phased out like a lot of the people when Jim Crockett's promotions were sold by Turner, and they started to rebrand at WCW, and then all of the talent who worked for Jim Crockett Promotions had to be required to live in Atlanta. But like a lot of the wrestlers with like Jimmy Valiant and Ivan Koloff and Paul Jones decided not to live in Atlanta. They decided to leave NWA, which was turning to WCW, which was very not. They wanted to like stay where they were comfortable with, and then Paul Jones kind of returned to the ring briefly in a small independent promotion for South Atlantic Pro Wrestling in 1990. He feuded with Robert Fuller, who over like the South Atlantic Pro Wrestling Championship. Robert Fuller is Colonel Robert Parker / Tennessee Lee, and Paul Jones retired in 1991 for wrestling completely, and he now runs a auto body shop. And Paul Jones was kind of an average wrestler for the Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling, and being a manager was, he was so at best. He wasn't the greatest manager, but he's famous for that feel for Jimmy Valiant Boogie Woogie Man, which I think that was a great mid-card feud. It lasted over 2 years, but great mid-card feud to like maybe get Paul Jones established as like him and his army as like mid-card heels. They weren't going to be main event, but Paul Jones was an average manager and a little bit above average manager, and that's what his famous role for younger fans are, that he was a manager and stuff like that. And he never had a run in the WWE. He wrestled maybe one match at Madison Square Garden back in 1972. But I heard like Paul Jones has not good comments about the owner of the WWE, Vince McMahon, at all. But I can't mention the comments here. And Paul Jones is probably one of those wrestlers that are kind of forgotten these days, but he was a good wrestler. He was kind of a mainstay wrestler for like Jim Crockett, Mid-Atlantic and Florida, and I doubt he'll go into WWE Hall of Fame because he doesn't have good things to say about Vince McMahon, but he's probably one of the greats of like Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling as a wrestler and a manager, which he was. I wouldn't say he was the worst manager. I wouldn't say he was the best. He was kind of like a Bobby Heenan type manager for Jim Crockett Promotions. And that's about it on number 1, Paul Jones. I'll be back later with the third and final video blog of the night. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's going to be very good. See ya tonight, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. Bye.